Hello, everyone, and welcome into Coach Craig's Sports. This is the XFL DFS live stream. It's going to be the first look at week 5. We're going to be doing a week 4 recap as well, kind of looking at some snap rates, target shares, amount of carries, amount of pass per attempts per team. So hopefully you guys will find this information pretty useful in general. But if you guys have any questions at all whatsoever during the live stream, or if you're watching on replay, feel free to leave them down in the comments or in the chat if you are watching live. But without further ado, I'm going to go through my notes for week 4. So we'll start off with the Arlington Renegades. Kyle Slaughter had 100% of the snaps and 100% of the pass attempts. He did not look very good this week. He threw 3 interceptions. So we'll see if they go back to Drew Plitt, because that could be an option since Slaughter hasn't been much of an improvement. Then in terms of the running backs, we had Davion Smith get 62% of the snaps. He had 60% of the carries, 9 total carries. They didn't run the ball as much in this game. And then he had 10% target share with 4 total targets. Adrian Killens, just had change the pace back, 7% of snaps. He had 1 carry for 7% carry share, and he did not receive a target in this week's game. And Kenneth Farrow, who recently joined the team, obviously he played a little bit the week before, 33% of snaps, 27% of the total carries, 4 total carries for him, and a 5% target share with 2 targets overall. So running back room, safely Davion Smith once again. Don't expect that to change anytime soon at this point in time. In terms of the wide receivers, been kind of interesting, though. They're just kind of playing all these guys a little bit here and there. So Tyler Vaughn's only played 52% of the snaps this week, so he's been kind of trending down in terms of snaps. Target share 15%, 6 targets, and exclusively played on the outside once again this week. So he's still getting a lot of targets, but his amount of snaps per game have gone down. So that is a concern, something that we want to watch for moving forward. LaJuan Winning had 47% of snaps. He had an 8% target share with 3 total targets, and he also played exclusively on the outside as well. Really hasn't been too big a factor outside of that one game where he had a touchdown, so not really too worried about him at this point in time. Brandon Arconato played 59% of the snaps and a 50% target share. He also had 6 targets, so he's pretty involved once again. Obviously, with Sean Monster inactive for week 4, kind of gave him that solidified slot role and really did pretty well in that. And he played exclusively out of the slot. Monster, as I mentioned, was inactive for week 4, so we don't really have to worry about him. He played 0% of the snaps the week prior to that as well. Jordan Smallwood still kind of doing his Jordan Smallwood role, 40% of snaps, a 5% target share with 2 targets. He played exclusively on the outside as well. So really not interested in him. His price tag really hasn't even dropped for DFS purposes either. And then last but not least, or I guess technically we got 2 guys left here. So Caleb Van Den Esch, who recently joined the team, played last week, played this week, and he played 67% of the snaps. He had a 13% target share with 5 total targets. And he played a little bit outside, and then he played in the slot kind of when Arconato wasn't out there in the slot, or kind of with both them being the slot. So he is an interesting play moving forward since he's playing this many snaps. He's kind of playing a little bit of inside, outside. So he's a pretty interesting guy moving forward, whether it's this week or future weeks. And then Javonta Payton, who they recently picked up in a trade, played 14% of snaps. He had a 0% target share as he received 0 targets in this game, and he played exclusively on the outside as well. So they're really rotating those outside wide receivers. Arconato has his defined role in the slot. Caleb Van Den Esch moving a little bit into the slot as well at times. And then Sal Cannella, the tight end, played 88% of snaps. He had a 23% target share with 9 total targets. So his role kind of as their number 1 option in the receiving game is still safe at this point in time. The other tight ends, we saw a 10% snap share for Sean Byer. He had 0 targets in this game for his 0% target share. And then I believe it's Nate Becker, 19% of snaps for him, a 5% target share, as he did see 2 targets in this game overall. Obviously, not a very good game for Arlington in week 4. We'll see if this offense can get their heads on straight in future weeks, though. But as of right now, not an offense that we're particularly targeting. Then we move down to the defenders who, they kind of have that platoon at quarterback. We saw 69% of snaps for Jordan Ta'amu, 31% of snaps for Derek King, and 90% of pass attempts for Jordan Ta'amu, and 10% of pass attempts for Derek King. He did have 1 passing touchdown as well. So this was really the Derek King week, and we saw that reflected in his price tag going up quite a bit this week as well. Then 23% of carries for Jordan Ta'amu. He had 9 total carries. 10% of carries for Derek King. He had 4 total carries, including 2 touchdowns. So Derek King had 3 total touchdowns this week and was a very good option, especially on the 2-game Sunday slate as well. Not really sure that's going to be something that happens moving forward, because Jordan Ta'amu was at least playing well enough to kind of keep his spot. In terms of the running backs, Abram Smith played 79% of the snaps in this game, which is his highest mark on the season, 56% of carries. He had 22 total carries, a 10% target share with 2 targets in this game as well. Wasn't super efficient on those 22 carries, but nice to see him getting that big workload. Raquel Armstead played 26% of snaps, 10% carry share. He only had 4 total carries, a 5% target share with 1 target in this game as well. Then Artavius Pierce, the third running back, he did play on 1 snap, but unfortunately injured his knee, so he didn't have any carries. He didn't have any targets, so that was his first snap of the season, and unfortunately ended up with a knee injury. Then we moved down to the wide receivers. So we had Chris Blair played 78% of snaps. So pretty high up there. Once again, their top 3 guys have been the top 3 guys all season. He had a 19% target share with 4 targets. And Chris Blair played exclusively on the outside. Josh Hammond played 93% of the snaps. He had a 24% target share with 5 total targets. And he played exclusively in the slot once again. So not much has changed in terms of wide receivers for DC. Lucky Jackson played 97% of snaps. He had a 29% target share with 6 total targets and played exclusively on the outside. And then you kind of have the backup wide receivers here. Josh Malone, 24% of snaps. He had a 5% target share with 1 target, played exclusively on the outside. And then Jaquiz Zard actually did something in this game. He played 10% of snaps, so not a lot, but he had 1 target in this game for a 5% target share, but he did score a touchdown on that lone target. And he was playing exclusively in the slot when he was out there. And then their other wide receiver, Brandon Smith, he was inactive for week 4 after playing 10% of the total snaps in week number 3. So pretty set in stone kind of DC pass game option wise. And, their passing game is not the most attractive thing in the world, obviously, since they're a run heavy team, but at least we kind of know what we're getting. And the guys with Chris Blair and Lucky Jackson, not too terrible price tags at this point in time. And then I keep writing. So this is supposed to be Ethan Wolf here. So Ethan Wolf was inactive in week number 4, as well as Briley Moore McKinney. They both did not play in week number 4. So the only 2 active tight ends they had were Trey Berry, who's been with the team for a while, and Alex Ellis, who was recently traded to the team this week. So in theory, you're thinking Trey Berry is going to play a bunch of snaps. He ends up playing 0 snaps. And Alex Ellis plays 91% of snaps as kind of their functional tight end in this situation. And he had a 1 target for a 5% target share. We'll see how that goes moving forward. But for a guy that recently joined the team, coming in and playing all the snaps pretty much right away, that's something that is promising, although he's probably not too involved in that offense overall. Then we move down to the Houston Roughnecks. So they kind of split quarterbacks once again. We have Cole McDonald getting 22% of the snaps. Brandon Silvers getting 78% of the snaps. 91% of the pass attempts did go to Brandon Silvers. He had 30 total pass attempts, 6% for Cole McDonald, who had 2 total pass attempts. And then there was a 3% in there for Javante Kirkland, the wide receiver, who did throw a pass on a double forward pass. For those of you who don't know, he played at LSU. He was mainly a wide receiver there, but he played some DB at times. He even filled in at quarterback for a couple of games, one of the seasons that he was there as well, when all their kind of other quarterbacks were injured. So not a surprise that he did throw a pass in this game. And then we got 13% carries for Cole McDonald. He only had 2 carries in this game, though, and then 7% for Brandon Silvers. He had 1 total carry, which was a negative carry, but I believe it might have been a kneel down at the end of the game as well. Then for the running backs, Max Borghi did not play in week 4. So we had Bryson Aline and Dejon Lee. And Aline played 37% of snaps. He had 40% of the carries with 6 total carries and a 9% target share with 3 total targets. And DeJuan Lee had 49% of the snaps, a 40% carry share, 6 total carries, 2 touchdowns on those carries, though, and a 9% target share. So these running backs were very, very similar. Both these guys are pretty undersized anyways, but Lee was the one that did end up getting the touchdown, so he was a little bit more valuable. Both of them saw a significant increase in their price tags for week number 5 for DFS purposes. At wide receiver, we saw Deontay Burnett play 76% of the snaps, a 9% target share with 3 targets. He caught the touchdown from Javante Kirkland on the double forward pass, and he played exclusively on the outside once again. So we did see a decrease in his snaps, but they were playing against Orlando. This game was kind of a blowout, so maybe they rested him kind of down the stretch. Javante Kirkland played 90% of the snaps. He had a 12% target share. He had 4 targets. He scored 1 receiving touchdown, and then he also did throw the passing touchdown as well. Actually, yeah, that's right. I had to think there for a minute, but he did have the 1 passing touchdown and the 1 receiving touchdown. He played exclusively on the outside once again. Then Nick Holley played 60% of the snaps. He had a 9% target share with 3 total targets. He played exclusively out of the slot once again. Hasn't been super effective, but he's a guy that's just kind of trustworthy and they run him out there a lot. Cedric Bird did see an increase in snaps quite a bit this week, 65% of snaps. I'm not sure if they used him a little bit out of the backfield or not, but mainly out of the slot for him, 21% target share, 7 total targets. Travell Harris, who is a guy that I like quite a bit once it was announced that Max Borghi was not playing, and he worked out really well for me for DFS purposes. If you guys haven't heard already, if you haven't seen on Twitter, I did take down the quarter and the dime contest for XFL Week 4 for the 4-game slate. So that was quite the achievement there. I had Travell Harris. I think the total lineup I had was Kirkland, Harris, Brian Hill, Morgan Ellison, Hakeem Butler, Brandon Silvers, and then it ended up being the Battlehawks defense. So it was 134.22 points. If you guys were interested in that. But Travell Harris played 40% of snaps. He had a 12% target share, 4 targets. He had 2 touchdowns, though. Played exclusively out of the slot once again. Ben Putnam also rotated into some slot snaps with 25% of snaps, a 3% target share with only 1 target. Still played exclusively out of the slot once again. And then we had Justin Smith, played 35% of the snaps and 9% target share, 3 total targets, played exclusively on the outside as well. So he was just kind of the filler guy on the outside when Kirkland and Burnett were not out there on the field. Aaron Nelson was inactive in week 4. He's only played 1 total snap all season. Garrett Owens, the tight end, H-back, whatever you want to call him, 22% of snaps, a 6% target share with 2 targets, although still didn't do anything with those targets overall. For the Orlando Guardians, we saw a little bit of a quarterback rotation once again. Paxton Lynch played 82% of the snaps. DeAndre Francois played 18% of the snaps. Lynch had 88% of the pass attempts. Francois had 12% of the pass attempts. And then Paxton Lynch ran the ball twice for a 10% carry share, and DeAndre Francois ran the ball once for a 1% or for a 5% carry share. So Paxton Lynch was the more effective quarterback once again out of the situation. He had 2 touchdowns. DeAndre Francois really didn't do much. Seems like they kind of benched Lynch and then they brought him back in once Francois kind of sucked. We'll see how this quarterback rotation looks moving forward, especially as Quentin Flowers becomes more comfortable with the playbook overall. In terms of the running backs, we had Jermaine Martin play 33% of the snaps, 19% of the carries. He only had 4 total carries in this game. He had a 6% target share with 2 targets, but really wasn't a very effective once again. So he's a guy that I liked a lot coming into the season. He looked decent when he was running the ball in week 1, but really hasn't been anything we can count on for DFS purposes. Seems like they like Devin Darrington a little bit in this game. His first game back from the reserve list, 33% of the snaps, 57% of the carries. He had 12 total carries. He had a 12.5% target share with 4 total targets. He was very involved in this offense and could be a kind of pay down option to look for going forward into week 5. And then I did move Dedrick Thomas up as well, just because he's kind of playing more running back than wide receiver at this point in time. He played 34% of the snaps, a 9% target share with 3 total targets, 2 carries out of the backfield for a 10% carry share. He had 16 snaps out of the backfield. He had 6 out wide and then 1 in the slot. So you're seeing that they are using him pretty much as a traditional running back or kind of, third down back in this case. So I kind of grouped them together, even though he's still listed at that wide receiver position. Charleston Rambo played 85% of the snaps. He had a 6% target share, only 2 targets, but he did catch a long pass for a touchdown. So he finally did something in week 4. It only took 4 weeks for him to do anything. Played exclusively on the outside. Still not a guy that I'm super excited for. One big play is not going to change my opinion too much on him. And then Cody Lattimore played 66% of the snaps. He had a 22% target share with 7 total targets. So he remains the leader on the team in terms of targets. He played exclusively in line and out of the slot in this most recent game. So, he's kind of had that tight end designation, even though he's still playing like a wide receiver, but mainly out of the slot. Seemed like the first game he was playing a little bit more on the outside, but we'll just have to watch that moving forward, but still very involved in this offense overall. Eli Rogers, 73% of snaps, 12.5% target share with 4 total targets, and he played exclusively out of the slot once again. So kind of a pay down option there. Nothing too exciting at this point in time. And then we get to Lance Lenoir, played 100% of the snaps. He played every single snap for this team. So the Lance Lenoir breakout game is coming right around the corner. And, the chemistry of Paxton Lynch and before, he's still very cheap this week. This feels like the week that it should be for Lance Lenoir. 16% target share. He had 5 total targets, played exclusively on the outside in this game as well. Then Dan Williams, who was the other wide receiver they picked up on waivers last week from San Antonio. He played with the Vipers last time around in the XFL back in 2020. played 15% of the snaps. He had one target for a 3% target share and played exclusively on the outside too. So he was out there when Charleston Rambo was not, essentially. So don't really expect him to be too involved moving forward. In terms of the tight ends, they have Logan Carter played 36% of the snaps. He had a 6% target share with 2 total targets. Ryan Becker played 6% of the snaps. He did not see a target, so he had a 0% target share. And then Jalen Smith, who's recently joined the team, pretty athletic tight end too. He played 19% of snaps, a 6% target share. He had 2 targets and 1 touchdown in this game. So he's a guy that does offer a little bit of upside moving forward, but he's really just not getting the volume to matter. And he's not playing enough snaps that we really want to focus on him at this point in time, unless you're playing like a single game showdown slate or something like that. Then we move down to San Antonio. Jack Cohen played 100% of snaps and took 100% of the pass attempts once again. And this was his second lackluster performance in a row. And he did not look pretty good when I was watching this game too. So I would not be surprised if they try to go to Reed Sinnett sometime in the near future. He has a little bit more experience, since he's been flown around the NFL for a little bit longer. Playing in the XFL, I thought Reed Sinnett was going to be the starter, but we'll see how long the leash is on Jack Cohen moving forward. Not anybody that I would recommend playing in the near future. Then we have Kalen Ballage, played 62% of the snaps. He had 45% of the carries, although it was only 5 total carries. So you're talking about a team that went from being pretty run heavy to kind of spreading the ball out and trying to throw the ball a ton. Don't think that's the best recipe for success for a guy like Jack Cohen, if I'm being completely honest. And then we had Jacuz Patrick, played 38% of snaps. He had 18% of the carries with only 2 carries in this game, a 8% target share with 3 total targets. I kind of went off on my tangent there with Kalen Ballage. He also had a 16% target share with 6 targets. I believe I missed that. John Hillman played 7% of the snaps. He had 1 carry for a 9% carry share, and he had 0 targets in this game. So he's very, very minimally involved once again. TJ Vasher, who had been seeing an increased role, was inactive for week 4. He had scored a touchdown in 2 straight weeks, so they kind of missed him in this game. Jalen Tolliver was back to himself. He played 88% of snaps. He had a 26% target share with 10 total targets in this game. So a pretty good, like middle of the road option once again moving forward. He played 51 total snaps. 31 of them were on the outside, 20 of them were in the slots. So that is something to monitor moving forward. It seems like they're trying to move him around to get him the ball in space. And then Darius Roberson played 2% of the snaps. He had 1 carry for a 9% carry share. He did not receive a single target. You're talking about a guy that filled in the slot after Landon Akers went down, had the really big week, and it has essentially disappeared out of the offense altogether since then. So not anybody that we want to focus on. We have Fred Brown playing 97% of the snaps. He had a 16% target share with 6 total targets. He was actually relatively involved in this game. He's still pretty cheap. He primarily played out of the slot in this game, so he could be an interesting piece moving forward, especially if TJ Vasher misses once again for week number 5. Then we have Travis Johnson, 34% of snaps, a 3% target share with only 1 target, played exclusively on the outside once again. Not anybody that we really want to target moving forward. And then here's the interesting one from this past week. Travis Toavine, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing his name right, played 78% of snaps. He had an 18% target share, 7 total targets, and played exclusively on the outside. Seems like he was the guy filling in for Vasher. If Vasher misses once again this week or is limited in any fashion, Travis Toavine is going to be somebody that we want to target because I believe he's the min price at 3,000 once again this week. So seems like he was very involved. We'll see if that goes forward to future weeks, but definitely somebody to consider. Alize Mack played 66% of snaps, had an 11% target share with 4 total targets. Still relatively involved, but at his price tag, not really going out of my way to get him. We have Deion Yelder, 29% of snaps. Really reduced rate for him. Ever since they kind of went more to the passing as opposed to the running, Yelder's not been out there quite as much. He had a 3% target share with only 1 target in this most recent game. For the Seattle Sea Dragons, Ben DiNucci played 100% of snaps. He had 100% of pass attempts once again. Morgan Ellison, 62% of snaps, 80% of total carries, 16 carries total, 1 rushing touchdown. Morgan Ellison, somebody that has a pretty safe role in his backfield at this point in time. Somebody I would be very interested in for week 5. He has a 5% target share with 2 targets in week 4 as well. TJ Hammonds played 11% of snaps. He had 1 total carry for a 5% carry rate. He had 1 target for a 2.5% target share. And then Darius Bradwell, who recently signed with the team, 3% of snaps, 5% of carries with only 1 carry. And he had a 0% target share. He only played like 2 snaps in total for this game. He did get 1 carry on those 2 snaps, though. Ja'Cory Pearson kind of been their main focal point on offense, at least through 4 weeks. 86% of snaps, 22.5% target share. He had 9 total targets. He played exclusively out of the slot once again. So pretty much what we've seen out of him on a regular basis. And then we have Blake Jackson, 94% of snaps, a 20% target share, 8 total targets, played exclusively out of the slot once again. So those two guys don't really need to say too much about them. Josh Gordon was pretty involved in this game, although he only played 52% of snaps. He had a 20% target share with 8 targets and played exclusively on the outside once again. So he's somebody to consider, but like the snap rates for Josh Gordon leaves a little bit to be desired overall, but they have been getting him the ball a little bit more exclusively in recent weeks. And then a guy that I thought was going to make a pretty big impact, at least early on in the season, Jawan Green, really was slow rolling the first couple of weeks. Scored a touchdown 2 straight weeks now, though. Played 57% of snaps. He had a 15% target share with 6 targets this most recent game, and he had 1 touchdown. Kind of played a little bit on the outside and a little bit in the slot. 21 snaps in the slot, 16 on the outside. I might have to sneeze here in a minute, so if I excuse me. So I do apologize for that, first of all. Jordan Vesey, still kind of that other starter on the outside, played 69% of the snaps there, 10% target share with 4 total targets, and he played exclusively on the outside opposite Josh Gordon once again. Damian Willis played 54% of snaps. He had a 5% target share with 2 total targets in this most recent game. Played exclusively on the outside once again. Then we have Kelvin McKnight, play 5% of snaps. He had 0 targets in this game. I believe he played exclusively out of the slot as well. Then we had Charlie Tamoapo, the tight end, H-back, whatever you really want to call him, fullback. He was inactive for week 4 as well. And then we move down to the Battle Hawks. AJ McCarron played 100% of snaps. He had 100% of the pass attempts once again. So not too much to say there. He's one of the safer quarterbacks. Doesn't offer some of the upside as maybe like a Ben DiNucci, a Brandon Silvers, or some of these rushing quarterbacks, but he is a pretty safe play week to week. Brian Hill played 70% of the snaps. He had 64% of the carries, 18 total carries. He had 1 rushing touchdown, 11% target share. He had 3 targets out of the backfield as well. Brian Hill is one of these safer running back plays once again. So pretty much what we're seeing right now, running back wise, Brian Hill, Morgan Ellison, and Davion Smith, probably the 3 safest ones in their backfields. Max Borghi's probably safe once he comes back once again, but they did give him that extra week off for his knee injury. Then we have Mateo Durant, 20% of the snaps. He had 18% of the carries, 5 total carries, 1 target out of the backfield for a 4% target share overall. And then Kareem Walker played 10% of snaps. He had 3 carries for 11% carry share, no targets out of the backfield. Then we move down to wide receivers. Obviously, this was a point of interest since there was no Marcel Aitman this week. He is on the reserve list. Not sure exactly how long he'll be out with his injury, but we kind of have a better picture of what this receiving room is going to look like without him. Darius Shepard played 87% of the snaps. He had a 30% target share. He had 8 total targets and a touchdown in this game. Seems like they were moving him around a little bit more. 36 snaps on the outside, 16 in the slot. Could be a guy of interest moving forward. Not my favorite player. He wasn't very good in the NFL. He's been all right in these spring leagues, but it's just kind of these pop-up weeks here and there. So not anybody you can consistently count on from week to week. Hakeem Butler played 88% of snaps, 22% target share with 6 total targets and a touchdown. I believe he scored a touchdown every single week now. So he's kind of their red zone threat. He's kind of the consistent wide receiver, at least so far for this Battlehawks team. He had 22 snaps on the outside, 27 in the slots. So they're finding ways to move these guys around quite a bit. Especially since Austin Proel, the other wide receiver, played 80% of the snaps, 22% target share with 6 total targets, and primarily played out of the slot. So when you're thinking about those guys moving into the slot, Proel's mainly there most of the time anyways. Stephen Mitchell Jr. played 40% of snaps. He had 11% target share with 3 total targets overall. He played exclusively on the outside once again. He's kind of a pay down option if you really want to go there, but not too excited by this past week since he went down from like 56% of snaps to 40% of snaps. Not trending in the right direction. Gary Jennings and George Campbell also both played, but not very involved. Gary Jennings played 5% of snaps. He had 0% of targets, or 0% target share, played exclusively on the outside. And then George Campbell, 27% of snaps, did not receive a target as well and played exclusively on the outside. This week at tight end, we did not have Giovanni Haskins. He was inactive for week 4. Not sure exactly what was up with that because I don't believe I saw him with an injury this week. They went back to Jordan Thomas and Jake Sutherland. Sutherland played 48% of snaps. He didn't receive a single target. Jordan Thomas played 25% of snaps and did not receive a single target as well. So tight end's not too involved once again for the Battlehawks. Nothing too new there in that department. Then we have the Las Vegas Vipers. Brett Hundley was dealing with a thigh injury throughout the week. Seems like he re-injured it during this most recent game. He played 21% of snaps. He had 14% of pass attempts and 10% of the carries with 2 total carries. Monitor his status moving forward for week 5. If he's able to go, we'll play him, but we'll probably play him a little bit lighter than we would otherwise. Don't expect too much rushing for him. But if he's unable to go, Luis Perez would become a GPP option at that point in time. Perez played 79% of snaps, 86% of pass attempts. He did run the ball once, so he had a 5% carry share. When we go down to the running backs, seems like they kind of condensed this with the new player caller. That's something else important to note, since Dwayne Taylor was let go as the offensive coordinator for the Vegas Vipers. And I can't remember the name of the gentleman that took over his position, but he was formerly an offensive coordinator in the 90s for the NFL, for the Jets, the Steelers, and I believe the Minnesota Vikings. So be interesting to see how this team looks, if it looks much different in future weeks. Rod Smith played 48% of snaps. He had 25% of carries with 5 total carries and 8% target share out of the backfield for 3 targets. John Lovett kind of overtook him this week. So 49% of snaps, 39% of carries with 7 total carries, at 8% target share for 3 targets. So I think Lovett's somebody to consider moving forward. Seems like they kind of want him to be the guy out of this backfield. DeAndre Torrey played 5% of snaps. He had 2 total carries for a 10% carry share, and he had 1 target out of the backfield for a 3% target share. So not too interested in him once again. Thought he'd be more involved as kind of like this pass catching back, but they really don't trust him in pass protection apparently. So that is something to monitor moving forward as well. And then we saw Brian Burt make his season debut. He's been inactive every other week. He played 1 total snap in this, might have been 2 snaps, 1 or 2 snaps in this game at 2% of snaps total. He didn't receive a single carry. He saw 1 target out of the backfield for a 3% target share, but not anybody that we want to target in future weeks. Kind of the big thing for the wide receivers is Geronimo Allison was inactive for week number 4. Jeff Badette still played his big role, 94% of snaps, 25% target share, 9 total targets. And then he had 3 carries out of the backfield for a 15% carry share. Didn't really do too much on those carries, though. I believe he had 2 yards and 3 carries, exclusively used out of the slot once again, which if Brett Hundley's starting is something that's probably going to be pretty good, but he's still pretty effective in the weeks he's played with Luis Perez as well. Martavius Bryant only played 56% of snaps despite Geronimo Allison not playing in this game. That is pretty interesting overall. 11% target share with 4 total targets, played exclusively on the outside once again. Then we move down to Sneak Sweeting, who played 40% of snaps. He had a 17% target share with 6 total targets. He did have 2 receiving touchdowns in this game. Got banged up a little bit late in this game, too. He didn't receive a single carry, which I believe was the first time all season that he didn't have a carry out of the backfield. And then Matthew Sexton, the other wide receiver, played 94% of snaps, a 14% target share with 5 total targets, and played exclusively on the outside in the absence of Geronimo Allison. So if Allison were to miss again in week 5, Matthew Sexton and Sneak Sweeting would have a lot more interest once again, and they're pretty reasonably priced. In terms of the tight ends, Brandon Dillon played 46% of snaps. He had 8% target share with 3 total targets. I believe that's the most he's had all season in a single game. And then Cam Sutton played 33% of snaps. He did not receive a single target. Sean Price, only 13% of snaps. I believe that's the lowest snap count for him so far this year, but he's more of the blocking tight end. He received 0 targets. And then Travis Kuntz played 22% of snaps with 0 targets as well. So that's kind of the quick rundown in terms of snap share, target percentage, carry rate for the teams overall. Since we kind of went through all this too, I'm going to throw up real quick on the screen this banner for runthesims.com. If you use promo code coach over there, you'll save 10%. If you're someone like me, you like using the DYI, you're looking at some of these numbers. If you're on my Patreon, patreon.com/CoachCraigSport, small monthly donation over there, you can see every single week these snap rates, these target shares, these carry rates, and then kind of make your own rates from there. You can plug it into the DIY, excuse me. And so it's just do it yourself essentially. And you put in your ones there. They obviously have their ones preloaded, but if you don't like those ones, you want to make them change because you think somebody's going to be a little bit higher or lower, plug it in there, run the sims over there. You get your optimal based on what you put in. You get your projections for points. You can take that, download the CSV, run it in a classic optimizer, and build your lineups out that way as well. A very useful tool for XFL DFS. But once again, that is promo code coach over at runthesims.com to save 10% when you do use that code when you first sign up. So, kind of talk through all the notes at this point in time. I'm going to stop sharing the screen. We're going to do a first look at XFL DFS for week number 5. Going to bring up DraftKings. Going to look at some of the prices. We'll look game by game here. It is important to note there is a Thursday game this week with Seattle and Houston. Should be a pretty good game overall as well. And then we have 2 Saturday games and 1 Sunday game overall. So the Thursday games, being this Big Island game, being so far in advance before all the rest of the news, definitely something to monitor moving forward. But I think both these teams will be relatively healthy. We should get Max Borghi back for Houston this week. Elson obviously played last week for Seattle. Not too many injury concerns otherwise for them. Charlie Tumopo, he doesn't really matter if he plays or not at this point in time for DFS purposes. But we're looking at the quarterbacks here. Ben DiNucci's $11,300. Obviously, there's some volume there. There's some upside there, but he's the highest priced quarterback by a good margin on this slate. And I think even when you're talking about this game, I'd rather just go to Brandon Silvers at $10,200, say that $1,100 and just call it good. But a lot of other people are probably going to do that as well. So maybe Ben DiNucci's kind of the contrarian play this week instead of the chalkier play that he's been in most recent weeks. When we go over to the running back position, Max Borghi, definitely somebody to consider for GPPs. Once again, $9,300. He does have very good upside when he is out there and playing. Obviously, monitor his status throughout the week. Morgan Ellison at $7,000, only went up $100. He's had a pretty strong carry rate over the past 2 weeks, even though despite getting banged up. Still ran out there a ton and be somebody that I would consider even for cash games as well this week. These other running backs, not too interested in. The Houston guys you could look at if Max Borghi were to miss once again. Kind of the bread and butter of this game is probably going to be these wide receivers. So Ja'Cory Pearson, very, very strong play, but he's $11,000 now. Not sure you have to play him at cash in this point, just with that price tag overall. Probably some cheaper options that will open up some salary. Josh Gordon at $10,900. Feels a little bit more like a contrarian play once again this week. I thought he'd be a little bit more popular last week than he actually ended up being in most of the contest I was in. But still very interested in him for a contrarian play, but $10,900. Definitely pushing it with the snap counts that he's seeing at this point in time. Javante Kirkland at $10,100. I think he's a relatively safe play once again this week. GPP, you could probably roll him out in cash if you really want to do so. Deontay Burnett behind him at $9,600. More of a GPP play just since the target share has gone down in more recent weeks. And it seems like Houston's really trying to spread the ball around a little bit more. Blake Jackson at $8,500. He's out there a ton for Seattle. He has a pretty safe target share overall. If you want to play him in cash at $8,500, I don't mind that since he does have a relatively safe floor. Obviously, the matchup against Houston is a little bit tougher one, but we'll see how this game all shakes out. Travell Harris at $6,200. I love him, but the snap rate share was down last week. Even though he had the 2 touchdown game, had the big performance. It's going to be a little bit chalkier this week based on that because the average casual person is going to see the 2 touchdown game and go chasing that. But I would still consider him for GPPs this week. Maybe I'm a little bit lighter on him than I am in other weeks, but I'm going to definitely follow up on the ownership throughout the week as well, at least the projected ownership. Jordan VC, $4,900, mainly a GPP play once again, especially if everybody's focused on all these other wide receivers. Cedric Byrd is slightly interesting at $4,400. It's kind of a pay down option since he had the 7 targets last week. Putnam's not really a guy you want to get to at this point in time. Just he's behind too many guys. Juwan Green, this uptick is very interesting for him. $3,700 could be an interesting pay down options for GPPs this week. Not super interested in Justin Smith or Damian Willis or any of these other guys. We're really down here at this point in time. So that's mainly what we'd be looking at wide receiver for Houston and Seattle. Going over to the defenses, if I'm playing one of these, probably it's going to be Houston Roughnecks since they do have the slightly better defense. They're one of the best defenses in this league. They're able to get some pressure. And I believe the Seattle O-line's a little bit banged up at this point in time as well. So that could be something of interest moving forward, especially if they get out to a big lead. And DiNucci's been a little turnover prone, even though he's played relatively well otherwise. Then we'll go over to the next game with DC and St. Louis. We'll go to the quarterback position. AJ McCarron, he's $10,800. He's a pretty safe play, more of a GPP option than anything for me. Jordan Ta'amu, Derek King. If you want to play one of them, you can throw them out there, but I'm not really chasing them because they kind of hurt each other's upside. King obviously had the big game last week with the 3 touchdowns, but that's not going to happen more weeks than not. Abram Smith had the big carry share. He had the big snap rate once again, $8,800. Pretty steep price tag to pay for him, but as a kind of a contrarian option in GPPs. could be pretty interesting there. His ownership was actually projected pretty high for the 2-game slate last week. So not really sure if he came in at that or not, but if he's going to be projected high in ownership, we're going to go elsewhere. Brian Hill, cash game play at $8,000, one of the safest running backs in the XFL at this point in time. These other guys, really not interesting getting to them. Maybe if like Puka Williams is active in future weeks and they're kind of using him more as a wide receiver, could be interesting at that point in time, though. For the wide receivers, Hakeem Butler's $9,300 now, but he scored a touchdown every single week in the XFL. Seems like a pretty safe guy. You can play him in cash if you really want to do so. Darius Shepard, $8,000. Feels like a GPP play to me. Once again, maybe you could roll him out in cash if you trust him enough, but that's not me personally. Josh Hammond, $7,100 overpriced at this point in time, especially with DC not throwing the ball too much. Austin Perel, another GPP option. Lucky Jackson, Chris Blair, you can take some shots there since they're reasonably priced, although this isn't a super explosive passing offense. Steven Mitchell Jr., if you really want to throw him a GPP, you could do that as well. Not really looking at anybody else here unless we get like news that like Chad Hansen learned the playbook super fast for St. Louis and is going to be like involved or something, but don't expect that to be the case at this point in time. In terms of the defenses, I would have some exposure to both these defenses and GPPs, especially. Battlehawks would be my favorite, though, since I believe they are the slightly better defense. And, they're going against a run-heavy team, so could be a little bit more limited in terms of point scoring overall. So we're going to clear this one out. We're going to go over to Las Vegas and Orlando. So the quarterback situation for Vegas is very interesting. Whoever starts is a GPP option, whether it's Brett Hundley or Luis Perez. Even if Hundley starts with that injury, you might want to monitor it. Maybe you still play a little bit of Luis Perez if you're like 50 max and 150 max and anything else like that. And then Paxton Lynch, I think, is an interesting GPP play at $8,000. There is some upside here, especially if he plays the little game, but there's definitely some downside with DeAndre Francois and Quentin Flowers, just depending on who's active behind him. If both guys are active behind him, I'd have a little bit of worries at that point in time. In terms of the running backs in this game, I'm not too interested in Jermaine Martin or Rod Smith. John Lovett would be the guy from Vegas, and Devin Darrington is a pay down option for Orlando would be the two running backs that I would be most interested in from this game. Wide receiver, obviously you can play Jeff Badette, $9,800. Pretty big price tag, but he's been paying off more weeks than not. Charles Rambo, I'm avoiding, even if he had a long touchdown last week. Geronimo Allison, I don't know why he was inactive last week. I don't think they really said why he was inactive. We'll follow his status throughout the week, see if we hear anything else. If he's playing, he's kind of a GPP option. If he's not, then obviously we have to look elsewhere. Matavis Bryant, snap rates being down was kind of a big concern there, but in GPP as a contrarian option, I can get there. Cody Lattimore looks like a pretty good cash play once again, since he's leading the team in targets every single week. Sneak Sweeting, $5,300, a little bit of price tag bump up for him, but need to monitor that injury status just in general, see kind of what that looks like. And then we need to get down to Matthew Sexton, who is $3,600. Looks like a pretty interesting pay down option overall, just in general. And then we get to Lance Lenoir. Lance Lenoir is probably the last guy on this list, $3,300, 100% of snaps last week's pretty interesting overall. So he's a guy that I would consider in cash. I would consider as a GPP pay down option as well. Then we get over to defense. Vipers defense, I would consider in GPPs. Guardians probably going to avoid once again this week. And then we get to the last game with Arlington and San Antonio. So we have Jack Cohn once again, not interested in him. If you really think he's going to get benched at some point in this game, you could throw in like a Reeds in that lineup, but that's mainly if you're like 50 max and 150 max and something like that. Kyle Slaughter, I'm not interested in. He just hasn't had that upside. This offense, the way it's just doing in general, has not really had that offense or that upside in general. If you really think he gets benched for Drew Plitt, you could throw in a lineup in that if you're like 50 max and 150 max and something like that. And then for the running back position, not interested in any of the San Antonio guys at this point in time, especially since they're going to this pass happy attack. Davion Smith would be the guy from Arlington overall. And then for the pass catching options, Sal Cannell, you can play in GPPs. You could probably throw in a cash lineup if you really need a guy in that price tag range. And then getting down to Jalen Tolliver, I like him quite a bit in GPPs once again this week. Tyler Vaughn's I like, but like the snap share is kind of getting to be a concern. So he's a GPP option. And then moving down the ladder, Fred Brown, like if Vasher doesn't play, could be an interesting pay down option at $3,200. If those guys, if Vasher plays, he's an interesting option at $3,000. If he doesn't play, then Travis Tovine is going to be interesting at $3,000 once again. Caleb Van Den Esch is kind of interesting at $3,000 once again. So those would be kind of where I'm looking at in terms of wide receivers from that game. And then for defense, I like the Renegades defense against the Brahmas in this game. I like the Brahmas defense against the Renegades, so you can play either one from that game. But at this point in time, that's kind of what I have just in general prepared for, recapping week number 4. Taking a first look at XFL DFS for week 5. If you guys have any other additional questions, feel free to leave them down in the comments. I'll get back to you as quickly as possible. Also on Thursday, we'll be doing the regular live stream since we do have the Thursday game. So I'll be going over my XFL picks there, talking more in depth where I would play guys, GPP, cash lineup, GPP paydown. And hopefully by then we have a little bit more injury news and a little bit better understanding of what this slate's going to look like overall. But once again, if this is your first time joining me, do appreciate you taking the time out of your day. Appreciate everybody that did take it out in general. But if you are brand new to the channel, haven't already done so, please consider subscribing. Definitely would appreciate it. Helps to build the community that we're trying to build here at Coach Craig Sports, which is one that's truly for you, the viewers, helping you with your DFS. Primarily NBA and XFL DFS at this point in time, but MLB DFS right around the corner, USFL DFS right around the corner as well. We'll be putting out some prize picks for NBA and XFL when I have time to do so. And if there's any decent ones, if you're brand new to prize picks, use the promo code here below when you first sign up. Get 100% match deposit up to $100. Helps you out a little bit, helps me out a little bit. Prize picks, one of the better, parlay sites that are out there, especially since you can flex your picks. So you can afford to get one wrong here and there. But with that being said, once again, I do appreciate everybody taking the time out of their day to watch this video, whether you're watching live on the live stream or whether you're watching on replay. Hopefully you found some of this information useful. Hopefully you have some success in XFL DFS for week number 5 as well. But with that being said, that's pretty much all I have for this video for today. If you guys have any additional questions, do not hesitate to reach out and ask once again. But with that being said, that's all I have for today's video. I do appreciate each and every one of you taking the time out of your day to watch this video, watch this live stream. It does definitely mean a lot to me, and I hope that each and every one of you has a great rest of your day.